As we approach 7:05, we'll kick things off here. But again, welcome to everyone to the How to Buy Your First Home webinar series with the McKenzie team here, of course, as you can see us. So we are unbelievably grateful that you guys have decided to join us tonight, but also for the first couple of sessions here. So we are really excited about today's topic. But just to kind of preface a little bit about what we've covered over the last couple of weeks. Really, our goal for these 4 sessions is to make sure that you walk away at the end of this month, at the end of February, feeling confident and excited and more well prepared to start the adventure of buying your first home. Whether that's this year or whether it's going to be in the next couple of years, we want to make sure that you feel ready to go and confident and excited about that process. So in session number 1, we had on our broker of record here at Home Group Realty, Paul Fitzpatrick, who told us a little bit more about what's going on in this crazy market and why we're seeing such high competition, but also giving us a little bit of insight into his experience in the industry and the idea that this will ultimately taper off and it will get us back to more of an equilibrium. We then, session 2, talked about everything that you needed to know about mortgages and financing, where we had on our guest speaker and industry expert, Jeff Vandiverst, who hopefully shared a little bit more about the importance of getting your mortgage process started now and understanding kind of the ins and outs about some of the myths that are out there about being pre-approved and what it really means and kind of the right way to approach this adventure. And in session number 3 today, we really want to cater it to those and think about, okay, so now you understand what's going on in the industry. You've now got your financing in place. You've spoken to an expert like Jeff, and now you're going, okay, I'm ready to start searching for a home and what that process looks like and ultimately putting in an offer on a property and hopefully being a winner. And to kickstart that process and to really talk to you about what goes into all of that, this may come as a bit of a surprise and maybe a slight bias, but there was really kind of no one I figured that would be better to speak to about this topic than Kim McKenzie, who is part of the McKenzie real estate team. And I will do my best not to call her mom as we go through this call, but I do apologize if it comes up a couple of times. But I won't introduce Kim any further. I'll hand it over to you. But really, today is all about understanding the process of searching for your home and how to put an offer in and how to get the house that you've always wanted.
Well, thanks, Luke. I've got to admit, when you brought this idea in the fall and you said, Mom, I think I'm going to launch this first-time home buyer webinar, I went, yeah, great. That's great, Luke. You just take it and run with it. Not knowing that I would be one of the the experts. So here I am today, and I got to tell you, I'm very excited. First of all, I'm excited, Luke, that you joined our team and that we're working together. But I am so excited to be here to share the exciting process of buying, whether it's your first home. You know what? No matter if it's your first, second, third home, there's a thrill to it. But there's nothing like your first home. It's just great. I love the journey with buyers. And yeah, I'm just so happy to share what I know and what I've experienced.
Awesome. And just when Kim and I were kind of chatting a bit about how we wanted this conversation to flow, one of the biggest topics that we kept circling back to was, okay, we know that first-time buyers, this can be a bit of an overwhelming process. And whether you're looking to buy your house this year or you're planning for the future in the next 2 to 5 years, it was understanding how important knowing this process of searching for a home, how that all goes, what you should be aware of, what you should be looking for, but also the offer process and being aware of how you place an offer and how that whole situation plays out was really important. And I know, Kim, you had talked about clients of yours who were looking a couple of years down the road and kind of put that into practice.
You're right, Luke. So it doesn't matter if you're ready to buy a house today, or as Luke said, I had clients who reached out to me. They were referred to me from a Toronto realtor, and I met them at Planet Bean maybe 3 years ago. And they sat down, husband, wife, teenage daughter, and they said, so yeah, we really want to move to Guelph. we're thinking about 2 to 3 years down the road. And I went, okay. And of course, they came in not knowing anything about Guelph, had heard great things about our city. So we had a great chat about what they wanted. They didn't know Guelph, so we set up a very general search for them. And what was so great, it only actually took them about a year to make the move, because once they would come every weekend. They go to open houses, they drive the neighborhoods, they go to cafes, they go to restaurants, and they began to know neighborhoods. So when they finally were ready to buy, they knew like the top 2, 3 neighborhoods they were wanting to buy in. They had their search criteria nailed down. And yeah, so it can take a long time, and whatever stage you're in, there's no time like now to start learning and start knowing about what you're looking for and what Guelph has to offer. Not even just Guelph, but the areas, and becoming more educated about what the markets have.
No, and that's why we applaud kind of each and every one of you for joining in on this, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're educating yourself on the process, and that's really what we want to be here. We want to be as transparent as we can be about the process. So then again, you kind of know what everything that you need to know going into it. So I think kind of a great place to start would be, as I mentioned, we're now on session 3, and to kind of put this into perspective, we want to think about this. Okay, so I'm a first-time home buyer. I've now spoken to a mortgage specialist. I've now kind of got an understanding as to what I'm pre-approved for. I've gotten a true pre-approval, and I understand kind of what my budget is. And I go, okay, I've got my financing in place. I've got all that. I've got a co-signer, everything outlined. I'm confident in that stage. I'm ready to search for a home. But where do I get started? And there's so many different websites that you can start looking at, and you can start learning about, okay, well, there's this price in this neighborhood and this price in this, and it's selling for this much over listing. And it can start, there's a lot of knowledge out there, and it can get a bit overwhelming. So Kim, I thought a great place to start would be when you meet with a first-time home buyer or just a buyer in general, what does that kind of first step look like, and how does that conversation go?
So typically what I want to do is, sometimes I know the client, but oftentimes they've been referred or recommended or heard of me from somehow. I like a meeting. Before COVID, it would be a in person, let's have a coffee. Now it's a Zoom call or a call, and it's just trying to understand, first of all, if they've been pre-approved, and if they haven't been pre-approved, I try to steer them that direction so that they know what their budget is before they go shopping. You know, it's like when you go shopping for a car and you don't know what your budget is, you don't know what site what dealership you're going to land on. So to me, it's knowledge is better. So go get pre-approved. I can help you with that process. But then it's okay. So this is your budget. What's important to you in a house? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? Do you need a garage? Do you want a finished basement? Some people want it totally done. They don't want to do any fixing up. Other people are looking for that fixer upper. So for me, it's just understanding what the buyer would like, so that I have got in my radar when I'm out looking at properties and when I see things come up.
Mm-hmm. And when I've been a part of some of those conversations and seen you have those conversations with people, yes, a lot of the time it has to do with the house and the features about all that, but a lot of the time it has to do with the people and where they're at in life and their situation and where they're working and where their kids want to go to school. And I know that, as a first-time buyer, you may not be thinking about that, but you've got some of those, life considerations to take into play too.
Right. Yep. And exactly. Because people buying their first house might be thinking about a family in the next couple of years. And I don't want them to call me in 2 years and go, ooh, we've outgrown our house already. So those are important things that I try to understand.
Okay, so you've kind of gotten to know them a little bit, understand what it is that they're looking for in a house. How often does then, I guess, the conversation come up? Because one of the questions that we got was around, okay, so I understand kind of what my budget is. I've been pre-approved for X, but what are the other costs that I need to be really considering in all of this? And so is that something that you should kind of be aware of before you start your search?
Yeah, because I think people need to know certain things like, it costs you nothing to look at houses. But when you do get successful and you do have an offer accepted, there's going to be a deposit that's going to be required. And a deposit is an amount that shows good faith as a buyer to the seller that you are actually going to close on that property. In Guelph right now, an average in that $400,000 to $700,000 range, a $10,000 to $20,000 deposit will be required upon acceptance. So, and that has to be, a check, bank draft, so cash in hand. So that's important for people to know. Yes, they may have their 5-10% down payment saved, but they also need another chunk of money. Now that can be borrowed from a family member or whatever, but they need that money upon acceptance of an offer.
Okay. And we'll get into a little bit more about some of those details later as we come into this process. But I just wanted to kind of point out that there are some other numbers and that you need to be considering before you go into your budget. Not just I've been pre-approved for X, so I'm going to spend X on the listing price. There's a few other costs and stuff that you need to figure in. But we'll get into some of those details as we move on. So at this stage, okay, so you met the buyer, you kind of have narrowed in on, okay, this is the type of neighborhood we'd like to be in, this is the kind of house that we'd like to buy. What's next in searching for a house? Where do you kind of point people in getting started? Because I know that a lot of people look on whether it's Realtor.ca is a big lead, or they go to certain brokerages websites, but what's the best way for people to kind of jump into searching for a house?
So what we try to do, and we can set up, what I like to do is set up a personal search, because everybody has different search criteria. So if you're a buyer and you're searching Realtor.ca in Guelph every day, you have to filter through and sift through every price range, every style, whether it's apartment, condo, townhouse, detached, where what I try to do is understand what you are looking for, and then I set up a search criteria for you. And what's very cool about our system is we set up what we call a portal search. And in that, I can designate as many geographical areas in Guelph. I can do all of Guelph if people want. Price point, where they're looking for in Guelph, style of house, so that as a buyer, you get up-to-date notifications as new listings come on. The system is so up-to-date that if I'm out showing or I'm with a client, I may not even know, if I'm not in front of my computer, that a new house has come up in that neighborhood. But as a buyer, you are going to know about it as soon as I would know about it. So it's live, it's to the minute. And in this market right now, you need that. Where Realtor.ca, quite often, it's Realtor.ca is managed by the Canadian Real Estate Association. So it's a national. So often as Guelph, as a board, we post our new listings, but it doesn't go up into Realtor.ca. It can be a 12 to 24 hour delay. So as a buyer or who's looking and counting on just Realtor.ca, you can miss out on some new listings because you weren't a part of the specific board.
And I will just point out to people, even though Kim and I may be referencing Guelph, because that's where we live and where our office is located, we do service the surrounding areas as well. And as a realtor, you are licensed to trade in real estate all over the province. So even though we may mention Guelph, we do a lot of business also in Kitchener-Waterloo, in Cambridge, and wherever our clients kind of point us. I know that, Kim, you've been kind of shuttled around the province to help people buy, but just so that people keep it in mind as well. And just on that note about Realtor.ca versus MLS, when people are starting then to look on their portal search, what types of information can they find on there that they may not be able to find on Realtor.ca?
So you're going to get more information on Realtor.ca. You can get the pictures, of course. You can get taxes, but what you can't get would be when offer dates are. So when sellers are looking at offers, closing date, what the possession date is that sellers are looking for, A list of the inclusions. So move chattels that are included in the home, like appliances, window coverings, those sorts of things. So you don't see that on Realtor.ca. Realtor.ca is very general, where this is very, again, you're going to see the exact listing that I would see.
And would you say that, are there a lot of cases where someone may send you a Realtor.ca link and say, hey, Kim, I really want to go see this place. I think it's perfect. And when you actually then go to the true listing and look at some of the details, is it oftentimes that it may not be a perfect fit and there may be some details in there that you can go, I don't think this is the right place for you?
Exactly. Because if somebody's looking for a 30-day close and my buyer is looking for a 6-month close, it's not going to work. The other thing that's interesting is sometimes with Realtor.ca, you don't get you don't get the updated information. You don't know how long it's been on the market. So sometimes somebody can go, oh, I'm going to start buying a house today, and they go on Realtor.ca. What you don't see is days on market, where what we see is, has it been on the market 3 days, 30 days, 60 days? And that can really make a difference as a buyer with your negotiating power as well. And you don't see if it's been reduced in price. All key things as a buyer you want to know before going and making an offer on a house.
No, that's all super informative. Okay, so as someone who's now been set up on the portal search and they're starting to now take a look at places, and we then work towards shortlisting maybe a few, and we decide, okay, we want to go and see these places in person. I guess a question that we've been getting a lot is, how has COVID impacted some of those showings? And what some of the protocols are with that. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that may be thinking, I don't know if I feel totally comfortable going to see a house. I don't really know what the precautions are. So what kind of precautions have been set in place?
Good question, Luke. So before COVID, we could show houses. I would often, if it was a new listing, I would book a showing, let's say from 2 to 2:30 on a Friday. I would go and there would be 2 other realtors showing the house at the same time. And we would all manage, and we would do okay, you're done upstairs. Okay, I'll start downstairs. And then we would be in the house at the same time. And it was just, we were crawling all over one another. Now with COVID, we've been deemed an essential service, but of course we've got protocol in place. So it's only individual showings at a time. Of course, we all wear masks. Often people are asked to wear gloves, or the agent is asked to wear gloves, so that when we go into a home, if somebody wants to say, Kim, can you open this closet door, open this cupboard, I'm the only one touching things. So we really try to manage the touching services. There's no double showings. And it's just, we're being respectful.
Yeah.
But of course, with that, what it means is showings now, there's only so many hours in a day. And with listings that are coming out and they're backed up every half hour or every 15 minutes on the day, you're tight. You can't be late for a showing.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. It's crazy to hear you talk about that, because I know that just some of the showings that I've done, just the idea that there be multiple groups in a house is just, I've only worked, for those of you who don't know, I've only worked in the business during COVID. And so for me to hear that about multiple groups and multiple realtors in a house, it like upsets my stomach thinking about it. I'm like, that's so wrong. But it was a different time. So.
Yeah, pre-COVID, I remember showing a house and going with buyers, and there were two other separate groups in the house and a home inspection going on. And so we're all trying to hear what the home inspector is trying to say, because he's there doing an inspection. It was crazy.
So now to bring it back to, we need to kind of understand everyone needs to show up with a mask on, and we've got the precautions before we go in. And now you're going to look at the home, and you're going actually inside to take a look at, okay, is this a home that I want to put an offer in? So what typically do you see, what should people go in looking for and be aware of? But what is the difference between what maybe a buyer is looking for versus what we as realtors look for when we're seeing a house for the first time?
So now with COVID, just to go back to that, Luke, what we're trying to do, and you and I are doing, is not only are we doing professional photos of our listings, but we're doing what we call eye guides, so floor plans, so that what we're trying to do is do as much virtual. So as a buyer, you can be online and doing as much research about a home. So when a listing comes out, what we try to do is qualify those buyers coming into a house. You know the floor plan, you know the pictures, you know you've had the virtual tour, so that when you come into a house, you are, as a buyer, pretty aware of what the house is going to look like as far as the floor plan. What you don't know is pictures, as we know, can be very deceiving. So what you want to do is understand the layout is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Features of the home. What you don't see sometimes is we're staging a lot of our homes. A lot of the homes are staged that you're seeing online. So they look perfect. And when you go in, you're like, oh my goodness, I love those throw cushions. I love that blanket. Love that picture, that artwork. And you can get thrown off by that. So what I try to do is go, okay, that's great, but let's really look at the use of space. Because often as a stager, we'll go, I love this line, white towels in the bathrooms and the showers you empty out. So they don't, the idea is it's like walking into a hotel room when you check in. There's no shampoo, conditioner bottles, nothing. So it looks pristine. But what you try to do is imagine, okay, what's it going to look like on a daily basis with all my stuff in here? And you open up closets and stagers will say, get rid of 2/3 of stuff. So you can go into a closet and go, wow, there's lots of room, but is it really enough room? So it's really just trying to point those things out to buyers. You know, the other thing right now is kitchen appliances, these Instapots, the air fryers. Well, where's all that stuff going to go?
Yeah.
So
you mean every kitchen doesn't have a beautiful vase of flowers and a bowl of fresh green apples in it all the time?
yeah, green apples.
Okay. And what else would you as a realtor, when you're taking a look at, okay, what are some of the spaces and making sure that it fits kind of the lifestyle, but at kind of the bones of the house, are there certain things that you as a realtor look for and that first time home buyers should be aware of? Because I know in a lot of cases, as a first time buyer, you're looking at entry level homes and maybe a lower price tag of the market. And so are there certain things that you as a realtor kind of walk around and take a look for kind of structurally or at the bones of the house?
Absolutely. And I think we touched on this either last week or the week before, Luke, about you looking at student houses. You boys went in about, you know, where's the keg going to go? And I went more about, okay, you're paying for utilities. So how do the windows?
We were there for education. For sure.
Sure. But yeah, of course, I go in and I think, okay, how are the windows? Is there condensation? Are the seals broken? I look at the age of the furnace. You can often tell, unless it's snow covered, the shingles. The electrical panel I always look into. Like, you want to know those sorts of things. It's not just about the house and how it looks, but the mechanical systems.
And that's been a cool thing, just me getting started in the business and really doing some investigative work into a home before we actually go and see it, is in studying the MLS listing before, a lot of that information is included in it. And you can understand, and some of the dates aren't, but you can get an understanding of, okay, so when was the furnace replaced? Or what kind, like, does it have central air? Does it have, like, is that fireplace electrical, gas? And so it's been really helpful for me to be able to kind of study up on that, because as a realtor, you have access to that information and we can share that with you as a buyer, and you can really be just more knowledgeable about the house before you go walking into it.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with going into a house and going, yeah, the furnace is 20 years old. A home inspector will tell you that anything over 15 years has a higher probability of failure. So it's just knowing, budgeting. Okay, so I'm going to probably have to spend $3 to $5 grand on a new furnace in the next couple of years. So just make sure that you've got that money. There's nothing wrong with finding those deficiencies. It's just knowing how to budget for them.
And then that's a case where if we do go in and we do have questions about the house, that's where then we have the opportunity to communicate with the listing agent and ask some of those clarifying questions and make sure and ask, okay, so when was the roof replaced? Or how old is the furnace? When was it last serviced? So all of those questions, we then have an opportunity to go back to the agent and clarify.
Right.
Awesome. So that's now, okay, so we've gone and looked at houses, and we've looked at, in a lot of cases, sometimes it's, you walk into the first one and you're like, yep, this is the one I want to put an offer in. But a lot of cases you have to look at 5, 6, 13, 15 houses in order to find the one. But when you do decide that, okay, I want to put an offer in on a place, what does that process look like? And what are some of the things that you need to consider before you submit an offer?
So the first thing that we need to look at is when our offers being accepted at any time, or our offer, is there a specific offer date that offers are being reviewed at? Because that's going to determine our how quick we move on things. If a listing comes out and the seller is like, I'll look at offers anytime, then we need to think about, okay, let's look at the body of the offer. Similarly, if it's a we hold off offers, then it's okay. What due diligence can we do before we submit offers on that date?
And why? So there's kind of two situations then about how an offer can be submitted.
Mhm.
Why would someone hold off offers until a specific
Seller?
date? Yes, as a seller. Why
Yep.
would someone hold off offers until a certain date? And versus why would they just kind of leave it open that anyone can submit an offer at any time? What's kind of the reasoning behind those two?
In a market like ours right now, and again, this is a market that we're in right now. I don't think it will last for a bit, but it's not going to be here forever. In a market right now where our inventory, as we've talked about before, is so low, and we have low homes and we have a high number of buyers, sellers are going, okay, I'm going to put my house on the market. I'm going to be one of the few. I want to properly expose my house so that I can expose it to all of the potential buyers. As we know, a lot of the Toronto buyers are coming into our area, so they may not be able to get here the day that it becomes listed. So let's wait 3, 5, 7 days to expose it. Let everybody come through the house that they want, and then let them make an offer. So that's a strategy on sort of holding offers right now.
Okay.
And as we talked about before, the advantage of that as a buyer is, okay, so we've got 5 days a week to do our due diligence. Let's do what we can before offer date.
Yeah.
And there's been houses that have come up on the market in the last month, and they say, we're not holding off offers. They still go into multiple offers because the demand's there. So it doesn't mean that they're not holding off offers, that they're not going to get competition.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that you have to remember that both of them, you can still be competing against other buyers. And so, okay.
And so if somebody's not holding offers, Luke, and it comes out today, you've got to get your buyer in that day. Like you've got to be, that's why being hooked up to this portal search and live to the moment, because you're going to have full access to everything. You're not going to wake up in the morning and go, oh my goodness, I just missed that house.
Yeah, or in a lot of cases, we've had people send us Realtor.ca leads and be like, hey, I want to go see this place. And when we go to book them a showing, we go, oh, they were actually accepting offers today, or they actually just took an offer. So yeah, having kind of access to the most up-to-date information about a home is super valuable, because you really do need to jump on it.
Yeah.
So now that you kind of understand what the seller has decided to proceed with for offers, so whether they're holding off offers or whether they are accepting an offer at a time, walk us through then what the conversation looks like with your buyer about how to structure their offer, and what some of the kind of the key elements are that go into an offer, and what they need to consider.
Okay. So people often think the price is going to be the number one factor of an offer. It is very important. I always wait for the price at the end of our conversation. We talk more about, okay, the closing date. The seller wants 90 days. How's that work for you? Because as a buyer, let's go into, Luke, you're not competing. So you're just going to do an offer for a seller.
Okay.
You're going to have the chance. This is your offer to the seller. It's the buyer's offer to the seller. So you're going to make your offer what works for you. So you're going to put in what closing date works for you. You're going to try to work with the seller as much as possible. You're going to look at what the seller has said can stay in the house. So again, we're talking about appliances, garage door opener, if there's any furniture, that's shelving, that sort of thing. We're also going to look at what they want excluded. And as I said to you before, my rule of thumb with a seller is if you have to get a screwdriver out to remove something, that's an exclusion. So if you go into a house and there's beautiful shelving and maybe a media unit and everything that's screwed to the walls, make sure that that's staying with the house because it should be included if it is screwed in. Then
I've stolen that line from you, by the way, during showings. If people have asked that, I've stolen that. If you need a screwdriver to take it out, it should be excluded. So just so you know,
it makes sense. Yeah, and the one right now, everybody usually people have got the wall-mounted TV. Not many people are leaving their TVs, but they'll leave you the wall mount.
Very kind of them.
Yeah. And then we talk about sort of the body of the offer is what I talk about. And that's your conditions of the offer and your warranties and representations. So if you're going into a house and you're not competing and you say, you know what, I want to have a finance condition, then that's where that condition would go in. Finance conditions are typically 5 business days in a normal world. Then we would, if somebody said, yep, and I want to have a home inspection, we would try to time those dates the same. Okay. And it's 5 business days, that's generally a week. And then we ask for things like, I always put in that the furnace, AC, the chattels included will all be in good working order on closing. So when we, and we'll get to this, and the next part is, I always ask for 2 to 3 visits into a house again before closing. Because often, you've got your 15 minutes, half an hour to look at the house for the first time, your offer gets accepted. If your closing's not for 3 months, you sort of forget where rooms are and what they look like. So often you want to take your family through, you want to go in and measure for appliances or window coverings.
Yeah, or furniture or anything like that.
Right. And then we always ask for a day or 2 before closing to make sure what we call a final walkthrough. You want to make sure that the house is in the same state, maybe not as clean, but it's in the same state as when you first saw it. That the sellers haven't swapped out appliances. The appliances, we always test the stove, the dryer, those sorts of things, make sure they still work. Fireplaces, and and that would be your final walkthrough.
Okay. And then I guess the other point that we can't avoid is then price that goes into an offer. So we talked about the other elements that go into your offer, but then the sale price. So that was something that I also wanted to chat with you about because that's a question that we were getting a lot around. Okay, so I'm looking at listings or I'm doing research and I know that my budget is maybe $500,000. Okay, this place is $499.9. Perfect, it's in my budget. How do you go about navigating what something is being listed for versus then how much you should offer?
And that's where we can come into, we can use and we can pull out our market research about comparable sales in the neighborhood and tell you exactly this is what somebody has said the market value is for that neighborhood. A market value is determined, really what a buyer is willing to pay and what a seller is willing to sell for. And that's what we want to do is we want to see, okay, what recently has the market value been for similar homes in that area? And then it's, okay, how did the seller price the house? Is he out to lunch? Is he way overpriced? Or did he price this pretty competitively? Yeah. And that's gonna determine where we think the price is. Ultimately, it's what a buyer can pay. If their budget's $500, their budget's $500. You can only do what they can do. So yeah, it's just knowing and having the experience and having the education and buyers knowing the education about what those areas typically sell for.
Yeah. And I know that just kind of in conversations and in watching you navigate that is really kind of the name of the game. And why would someone underprice a house?
So we're seeing a little bit more of that in this marketplace, and what it's trying to do is drive more showings, more activity into a home to drive up that competing offer situation.
Hmm.
But even in not a market like ours right now, there are times when a seller just needs to sell,
Hmm.
and they, for financial reasons, an estate sale or whatever, and they put it on. Um, the great thing about our market, no matter what kind of market it is, it will always respond, and it will always tell you what the value is.
Mhm. And I guess it is, I, I guess it is part and parcel of why you want to work with someone who is in the midst of it each and every day and can find out those kind of anomalies and look at, okay, yeah, this house may be super under. I guess like a first time buyer might be looking at their portal search and go, wow, this place seems like really cheap and it's in my price range. Like this is perfect. But then when they take it to the realtor, they go, yeah, okay, this is underpriced by $100,000, and here's what it's based off of what their neighbor sold for and other similar homes in the area have sold for. Here's what it's going to probably sell for in a range. So I guess it's being able to navigate the market and being able to look at a home not just for what the price tag is, but what the true market value is.
Exactly. And it's so, what I find so unfair with that strategy as a seller is you get buyers who it shows up in their portal search and they go, this is awesome.
Mm.
And they get their hopes up. And, that's not fair.
Yeah. But I guess that's why we always say it's important to kind of share that search process with us, because we can help you navigate that and we can help get you set up and set your expectations for, okay, here's what your budget is. Awesome. We can work with that, but share that search process with us because we can kind of work together on navigating it and making sure that you find a home that is going to be in your price range and is what you're looking for.
Right.
So now we've kind of gotten to the point where, okay, you've talked about everything that goes into the offer, the purchase price, the conditions that are going in, the deposit check that's going to be amounted, the closing date, all of those details. And now you go, okay, Kim, we want to put our offer in. What's next? What does that offer presentation process look like?
So as a buyer, you sign all the paperwork and then we submit it to the seller and the seller's agent. And as a seller, they have, there's three things they can do with your offer. Now, let's say this is a non-competing offer, and it can work in competing too, but they have three choices. They can either reject your offer and say, I don't like this at all, which rarely happens. B, they can say, I love this offer. I'm going to accept it just as it is right now, which is awesome. Or C, they can say, you know what? I'm going to work with you. I'm going to counter your offer. And what a counter offer means is a sign back. So similarly to a buyer making their offer to the seller is now going to tweak the offer back to the buyer and make it in their favor. So maybe there's a little price change, a closing date change, and maybe they really wanted that washer and dryer. So they counter the offer back to the buyer. And with all offers, Luke, they're what we call is an irrevocable date and time. And time is of the essence with all offers and counter offers, because if the seller gives us an offer till 11 p.m. tonight and our buyers do nothing with that offer, then it's open, and it's open for other offers. So you've got to be really respectful as a buyer and a seller of those irrevocable times, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it kind of acts as an expiry date because you go, okay,
Exactly.
this offer is good until this time. You have to make a decision about how you want to proceed by this time.
Exactly. So then the seller, let's say he counters the offer back to the buyer. The buyer then, we would take that offer back to the buyer and say, okay, how does this work for you? And the same thing, the buyer could do three things: reject it, accept it, or sign it back again. So bit of a volleyball game.
Yeah. So that's in the case that you might be the only buyer submitting an offer.
Mhm.
But what happens in cases where you are one of many buyers who are putting an offer in and you're competing on the place? What does then that, how does that process differ for the seller, and what are kind of their options there?
So if there's multiple offers, so first off, as a buyer's agent, let's say we show a house tonight and our buyers say, really like it. We need the night to think about it. First thing I do is go back, I email the agent and say, you know what, there's some interest there. Keep me posted of any offers. So that we now are on the listing agent's radar of, okay, we got to keep these people up to date on any offers. Then the buyer, we always know as a buyer's agent how many offers are coming in on a property. And what I always say to people in a multiple offer situation is you've got to go in with your best offer that you can at the first, because you don't know if you're going to get a chance to improve your offer or not.
Hmm. Yeah. No, and I've heard you coach people through that situation, and it is that conversation of, okay, if you really have to treat this as you only get one shot at this house. And so if you put a number down and you find out that, oh, well, if only they came back to us and gave us a second chance, we would have gone up by 5, 10, $15,000. And you find out that that's what the house sold for. You go, oh, that we should have done that. You're kicking yourself. But I've heard you coach people through that. It's no, you need to approach this as putting your best offer as your first offer, because you may not get a chance to change it and update it.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you have to go in with what you think is your best offer. And a lot of people say, you know, Kim, will you know what the other offers are?
Mm,
No. It's like playing poker. You go in with your best hand and you lay your cards down.
mm,
Um, the only person who knows what the other offers are would be the listing agent and the sellers. But other than that, yeah, you have to go in with your best offer.
yeah. And that's something, just so that everybody knows, that is something that as the listing agent, you are not allowed to disclose any of the other details about the offers to any of the competing buyers. You do have to disclose how many offers there are, so whether, and keep people updated. So whether it's, okay, if we've received one offer, 5 offers, 15 offers, you have to keep people posted on the number. But you are not allowed to disclose, like, if Kim and I called up a listing agent on your behalf and we really want to make sure that, you know, Kai and Bree get that place, and we go, okay, so like, we talk to the listing agent and say, okay, so like, what really, like, what's the number that's going to win it? Like how much do we need to come up? We may be fishing, but we can't find out that information. And that's something that's held true as from an ethics standpoint from our real estate board. So just everybody knows that it is like poker, as Kim said, that it's kind of, everybody's got their hand and you then have to kind of play it the best way that you can.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, Luke, you and I were in a situation last week where there were 40 offers and our buyer, 40 offers. And the agent called me and said, okay, Kim, you're one of the 4 that we're going to send back and see if you want to improve your offer. And I thought, okay, 4 to 40, that's not bad. And our buyer, she really wanted it, needed it. And she said, okay, I'll go up 5,000. She went up 5,000. The agent called me to say, you got it. He said the other offer was identical to yours,
Hmm.
but the other offer wouldn't improve.
Yeah.
So she got it for $5,000 more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, and to kind of then move off of that, in that case, she was ecstatic and through the moon that she had won the place. And when working with a buyer, Kim, at that stage, you've now gotten your offer accepted, whether you've gone back and forth with the seller, either way, you've kind of got it accepted, your offer's done. Is that it? Is that time to now pop the champagne? You've now bought the place. What happens next? Or am I a homeowner yet?
Well, Luke, you know me, I always love to pop up a good bottle of champagne, but even if you're the only offer, you go in unconditional. You can celebrate because you've bought the house, it's sold. But if you've bought the house and there's conditions, so finance, inspection, you can always celebrate, but you've got to do your due diligence, and you might have 5 business days. So the next thing is we would get your documents to your mortgage lender to go for your finance approvals, final approvals. And then we would work with you to schedule a home inspector to get in, because you can do a home inspection. And the other thing with home inspections is the way the wording is in the offer is, the way it's worded, it's conditional upon the buyers having a satisfactory home inspection in their sole and absolute discretion.
Yeah.
So as a buyer, you can go into a home inspection and walk away from that deal, not for a burnout light bulb, but it could be something. So you need to do your due diligence and make sure that the house is to your satisfaction. And as a home inspector, there's 5 elements that a home inspector looks for. They look at your roof. Often they go up on your roof. They check the age of the shingles, the longevity of the shingles. They look at your heating and cooling systems, and they determine what the ages are, if they're working, if they're not working. They look at your plumbing systems, your electrical systems, and they look at structural. Structural will be cracks in the foundation, if there's evidence of water in the basement, those sorts of things. So that's it. A home inspection is a lengthy and a very important condition. And if something is revealed in the home inspection and a buyer is willing not to accept it, we can go to the seller and ask them to remedy, because often sellers don't even know that they had a problem with whatever. So yes, you get an offer accepted, but it's still conditional. There's still a lot of hurdles to jump before you get to that sign off, I'm sold firm.
And just to kind of bring it back to some of the earlier sessions, just so that everybody remembers, we do have an option to have that home inspection done before you submit an offer. So you can have that done before, but I remember that we had chatted about that earlier in some of the previous sessions. So, okay, so now you've got your offer accepted. Let's say then you did have a finance and home inspection condition. It's been the 5 business days, you've got firm finance approval, and now you've then also got a home inspection that's satisfactory. What then comes next?
So then what we would do is what we call a notice of fulfillment of conditions. And that is something that what we do is we say as a buyer, we have fulfilled those conditions and satisfied them. And then the deal is then firm and binding. And then the sold sign goes on, and then you can really pop champagne.
Well, you do have to submit your deposit check, I'm pretty sure, before then. Just a little bit, but yeah, I know that you had already accounted for that before the champagne, of course, pops.
Yeah, the deposit check is something that needs to be done it has to be delivered within 24 hours of acceptance of an offer. And now with COVID, you can either deliver it in person or you can wire it. Yeah. But and that deposit check, so let's say it's $10,000, gets held in trust by the listing brokerage and is used as part of the purchase price on closing. So let's say your house is $500,000, you put a $10,000 down, you're now responsible for coming up with the rest of the $490,000.
Okay. And so now you've got your offer accepted, the sold sign is on, the paperwork's all been signed. Now I'm a homeowner. Now I'm just kind of counting down the days until I move in, right? Right.
Yeah. But now what you've got to do is you got to line up movers. You've got to get your documents to your lawyer, which we do for you, and we communicate to the lawyer all the documents. You got to set up your utilities, and so that on the day of closing, no matter if you're going to move in, let's say closing's April 1st. If you're not going to move in April 1st, you're going to move in April 15th. The day of closing, you have to be responsible for all the utilities. And for a mortgage, you need to prove that you've got fire insurance, or else you won't get your mortgage. So those are all things that even from the sold sign to closing, we're a part of, and we guide you through that process.
And I think that's kind of a great place to kind of introduce then what session 4 is going to be all about, because while we've worked with you up until this point. We found the house that you want to buy. You put your offer in, it's been accepted. And yeah, like Kim said, we want to celebrate with you because this is a huge milestone and you should absolutely be excited. But there are a few other details that you need to be responsible for, and that we as your realtors are responsible for in communicating and managing from the time that you have your offer accepted to the time that you move in. And that's what we're going to be covering in session number 4. All of then what those steps are, what you need to be responsible for, the costs that you need to then account for as well in your budgeting. And we're also going to have on a legal expert, a real estate legal expert, to kind of walk you through all of then what you need to be responsible for and the land transfer tax costs and those associated there. So in session 4, we'll be covering all of that. But like Kim said, at this stage, you can celebrate because you bought your first home. And when Kim and I sat down and we were kind of mapping out what we wanted to cover in tonight's session and what we really wanted our message to be, and Kim, I can turn this over to you to explain, but just on a personal note, we really wanted to make sure that you kind of left this session feeling really excited about the process of searching for a home and getting an offer accepted, because that's why we do what we do and why we love what we do, is because we love being able to shop around with you and find the house that you've been dreaming of and be able to work with you to get those final signatures and to be able to celebrate the big win. And we would love nothing more than to help each and every one of you do that. So I know that that's one of the biggest reasons why I got into the business with Kim, was I knew that she had that passion. And I know that that's one of the reasons why your clients are so faithful to you.
Oh, it's awesome. It's the best. And I just love the excitement for my clients. And honestly, I love being part of the journey. It's the best.
Mhm. Awesome. So we're now coming up to just a few minutes here before 8. So I want to make sure that we do get everyone's questions covered. So please feel free, if you have any questions about anything that we've covered, either throw them in the chat or throw them in the Q&A box here. But we'll get started on these. So the first question that we had was, can you renege on an offer? What are the guidelines around it, if any? For instance, if a seller accepts your offer, can you then decide to back out?
So it's interesting. In 2017, when the market went insane again, we did find a lot of the GTA area coming this way, and they were paying crazy amounts for our homes. And at that time, we went, "Oh my goodness, these prices aren't sustainable." And it never happened to me, thank goodness. But there were instances where buyers would wake up the next morning and go, "Oh my goodness, what did I just do?" So we, as a listing agent, we do not report our sales firm until we have the deposit check from the buyer. As a seller, if you wake up the next morning and the buyers do not bring the deposit check, you try to, you go, okay, that didn't work out. Let's try to recreate that activity and that emotional frenzy again. The risk that you have of doing that is, once you do a deposit check and it's delivered, it's held in, Luke, we had a chat with the lawyer this morning, it's held in trust by the listing broker's account. You don't get your money back. Yeah. The seller could take you to small claims court. Yeah. So it's a risk that you take. It's a contract. It is a valid, serious contract that you're signing.
And I guess the only other thing that I'll add in is if you do build in conditions to your offer, those do give you an opportunity to not necessarily renege on your offer, but it's contractually part of the agreement that, let's say you do have a home inspection condition in it, and it says that in the agreement, if you as the buyer are not solely satisfied with the findings of that home inspection, you do have an opportunity to back out of the deal. So that's where conditions come into play. And then working with us as your realtors, we make sure that then the wording there is inputted correctly, and your lawyer will review it too, to make sure that you are protected.
Yeah.
So the next question we have, so hopefully that covered everything there. Next question is, why can't you disclose offer prices? What's the reasoning behind that? So in a multiple offer presentation or position, why can't you disclose the offer prices?
Good question. What I've been told is if you want to disclose prices, you should be going like it's like an auction, where when you go to an auction and it's the bidding, but you know what the other person is. But yeah, according to our ethics and our rules, we cannot do that.
Yeah, I think that's just the way that it has been set up, and that's the way that kind of the government has decided that that's the way that they're going to accept all offers.
Yeah, yeah, and so it's sort of putting everything on a level playing field.
Yeah, because I guess then, yeah, it would be a bit tough if you knew what all the other offers were, or if there was, let's say, colleagues that were submitting offers in it, or a colleague that maybe was the listing agent, but they also had a friend or a colleague that were putting an offer in, and they could then disclose some of the other information. And so
Like
it's
insider
really trying to
trading.
eliminate that.
Yeah, like insider trading. That's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully that covers that question as well, but thanks very much for it. The next question we have is your deposit check a part of your down payment, or is it another chunk of money that you need to save up for?
So no, it's part of it would go down. And that would be a question for your mortgage broker about how you're positioning it and how you're doing it. But typically you have to have that deposit in cash when you have an accepted offer.
Okay. So the timing on that is pretty good, as we just hit 8:01. And that, as of right now, there are no other questions in the chat box. So please, guys, feel free to throw in any questions that you have here. I'll just look at kind of some of the questions that maybe I had here that came to mind. I guess we were talking about conditions before. And in looking at including finance or home inspection conditions. And as a first-time buyer, someone may be looking at it going, okay, I spoke to my mortgage broker and they're really encouraging me to include a finance condition. Or my parents really want me to have a home inspection clause just to make sure that it's covered. But I realized that a lot of accepted offers now don't have any conditions. What would maybe your advice be to some of those people about removing conditions and how to approach that situation?
I think at the end of the day, it's up to the buyer to decide what they feel comfortable with. I'm not going to pressure anybody to do anything that they're going to wake up the next morning and go, oh my goodness, what did I just do? But there are ways to, if you want to have or get your financing approved, there are things that we can do ahead of time, like submitting the MLS listing, all of your personal documents, making sure that you've got all of those things to your mortgage broker ahead of time, that he or she might say, you know what, I've done a house appraisal for you, you're good to go. Similarly with the home inspection. If you really want that home inspection, you can, or there are home inspectors, as we said earlier, who will come in and do a pre-offer inspection. It might be a quickie, and because typically a home inspection takes 3 to 4 hours, but there are home inspectors right now who will come in and do a quick 1 hour, do a quick, let's just check the main systems. Or you might have a friend or a family member who's knowledgeable about construction, who you might say, let's book another showing and do another walkthrough.
Mm-hmm. And I think we also talked about it with Paul, and again as well with Jeff last week, about there are ways that you can, whether it's a home inspection or a finance condition, you can you can put in the work beforehand, before you submit an offer, to ultimately eliminate those conditions so that you don't have to go in. So a home inspection, you can have a home inspection completed before you put an offer in, but you have to make sure that you've allowed a certain amount of time and you can schedule that with the sellers. And then by the same token, Jeff mentioned last week that with a finance condition, if you are working with your mortgage broker or lender, and you are able to get all of the necessary paperwork and you complete all the necessary steps, there are cases where you can eliminate your finance condition because the lender's confident in your position. So, but it is getting ahead of it and really doing your due diligence beforehand.
And I think, Luke, that comes back to the beginning of our session where it's all about if you're 1 to 3, 5 years down the road, the more you can do now to get better organized in the planning, the better it is.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I guess there was another question that just popped up based off of that. What's the most common condition when people do have conditions in their offer that you see? And this is just from my standpoint, I think it probably would be finance and home inspection, wouldn't you say?
Number one would be finance.
Yeah.
So yeah, because typically as a pre-approval with finance, you as a buyer are pre-approved. The second part of because a buyer will say, Kim, I'm pre-approved. I'm good to buy this house. But the second part of that is the house approved? And a lender can pre-approve you, but they don't know what you're offering on at the time. So then they need a copy of the MLS listing and to make sure that the house approves and appraises out.
Yeah, and if people need a refresher on that, they can send us a message and I'll send you the recording from last week's session where Jeff kind of broke that down a little bit further. So, happy to send that across because he gives a pretty good explanation for it. So, and there was another one that came in just about conditions. At what price point would a seller consider accepting an offer with conditions versus no conditions?
So here's the so let's say put yourself in a seller's shoes tonight. You've got 2 offers in front of you. One's unconditional, one has conditions for 5 business days. As a seller, even if it's less money, if you accept the unconditional offer tonight, your house is sold. The sold sign goes on the lawn, showings stop, life goes back to normal. As a seller, you accept the other offer, let's say for $5,000 or $10,000 more, but you go, okay, that means I've got to wait 5 days to decide if my house is going to be sold.
Yeah.
If the buyers can satisfy themselves. If they don't, I'm back on the market and this all has to rev up again. So there are times where a seller will take a firm unconditional offer for less money just to have it done.
Yeah. Yeah, just so that they can sleep peacefully at night knowing that it's all over.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had one question that was, it said thanks. So that hopefully means that we gave a good explanation. The question we had was in regards to then a clarifying question about down payments and deposit checks. So to clarify, if you wanted to buy a $500,000 home, for example, and had $25,000 saved for a 5% down payment, would you need an additional $5,000 to $10,000 for the deposit check?
No. So if you would put your deposit check down as cash, that has to be liquid cash, and then that would be taken into consideration as part of your down payment.
Okay, so hopefully that answers your question and clarifies that, but please let us know if it doesn't. But yeah, at this point in time, that was the final question there, and we are a few minutes over 8 o'clock. So again, we do apologize for running a bit late, but just want to make sure that everyone's questions get answered. So we will, at this point in time, I think we could probably start wrapping up. And just so Kim, first and foremost, thank you so very much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with all of us. It does, I think, and this is a bit cheeky for me to say, but just working with you and having the opportunity to kind of hear you explain it, you can tell how much you do care about your clients and ensuring that they do get exactly what it is that they're hoping for. And so that you care about the process right from that initial coffee conversation, whether it's 2-3 years out, all the way to making sure that they've purchased their new home and they get the keys to it. So no, I know that it's quite apparent. So thank you for sharing all that with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for dragging me out here tonight, Luke.
Awesome. So I will, as always, we do have another door prize to say thank you for all of you for joining us this evening. So I will load up the wheel of names here. And we'll spin it off and see who today's winner is. And before I do, this week's door prize is a $25 gift card to Lady Glazed Donuts. So that is, I know that in our family, those are a hot item. So hopefully
I get entered in this?
Unfortunately not, but maybe I'll buy a donut. This week's winner is Sydney Peister. So Sydney, thank you very much for tuning in this week, and we will make sure that you get your gift card. But to everyone else, we just want to say an absolutely huge thank you for joining in this week for session number 3. And next week, we can't believe that it is our 4th and final session. Next Thursday, 7 o'clock, same time, where we'll be taking you through the process of now you've had your offer accepted. What do you need to do from that point to the time that you move in? And what are the responsibilities that you need to take care of and what we help you with? So looking forward to diving into that with you all next week. But at any point in time, again, if you have questions from today's session, send us a message anytime. We would be thrilled to help you and answer any questions and work with you on this exciting process. So Kim, did you have any final words to say?
Nope, that's it. See you all next week. We got to get that champagne popping.
Yep, always turns back to the champagne. All right, well, have a great night, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Good night.